In topic 1, we look at the different concepts and characteristics of systems, and we see how these systems, and later on how models, are applicable to environmental science and how that all this lets us see all of the big picture. So the first one we look at specifically how a system and what a system is. So if you take a look at these pictures, we have a solar system, we have a body. And the common thread between them is that they're both systems, that they're both made up of interdependent parts. So what we can kind of come up with, our idea, is that a system is individual components working together. So here's a bike. A bike is another example of a system because if I take apart this bike, these individual parts are not going to work. The system isn't going to process, you're not going to be able to get from point A to point B. It's just not going to happen if you just have the seats of the bike. So when they all work together though, I have a bike that's going to function. This is the idea of synergy, the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So working together, all of these different parts are going to create a whole organism, a whole machine, a whole system, versus that individual part that contributes to it, but it's not as good, it's not as great as the entire thing working together. So even if we know about all the different parts of the system, we really can't predict what's going to happen. And that's why we look at things from a holistic approach usually instead of that individual reductionist approach. If I look at all the different parts of your body, your fingernails, arm, leg, foot, if you just look at that individual, even getting smaller, looking at cells, we can't really determine how that's going to make the person. Just because you know every single thing about the cell doesn't mean you know every single thing about the person. We have to look at how these are going to function together. Another good example of this is table salt. You separate the two things, chlorine and sodium. Sodium has massive reactions with water. Chlorine as a gas can kill you. Put them together, it becomes something that's very important for our bodies and very important for life in general. This is what we call the synergistic effect. Environmental systems, ecosystem, ecological system, all these things follow this law of synergy, that the whole, the entire process, is more important than the individual parts of it. And that's kind of where this idea of environmental systems and societies fits into play. When we look at that system, when we look at the environment, we're seeing a lot of interrelationships: climate, geology, soil, vegetation, water, animals. And within those animals, we even have humans. So not only do we see the ecosystems part of it, but we have to consider the society's part as well, because humans are part of that society, and because we are thinking individuals, we form different hierarchies and we form different ways that we have relationships with each other and with the environment and with other aspects. So that's why we look at environmental systems and societies as a whole, as a synergistic effect, because there are so many different parts to it. Getting into the systems more themselves, we can define this as a collection of interdependent components. So like we mentioned before with the bike, all of these different parts depend upon the other one in order to perform this function, in order to move that bicycle forward. What happens in a system, an environmental system, is that this is connected through transfer of energy and matter. So as things are going to change, as they're going to flow, all of this is going to have an impact and is going to show us how the system is going to work together. There are certain characteristics of systems. They are certain components. We're going to talk about reservoirs, storages, stocks, all these different things. And we also have all these processes, how we're going to move energy, move materials, move matter through different processes. Photosynthesis and respiration are two great examples of that. And finally, we're going to look at our feedback mechanisms that allow for equilibrium and stability. Before we get a little bit into more about systems, it is important to know that there are some symbols that are commonly used in how we are going to represent them. So the first thing is we have flows, and these are arrows. These are what's considered our inputs and our outputs for storages. So if you take a look at this, for example, I have calories on there. That calories could be going into a human, into a fat, into something like that, in order to show that we're going to have materials, we're going to have matter that's going to flow in our energy. Storages are represented by boxes. So this is the area where energy or material or matter can accumulate for a length of time before it's released. And remember that storage always does have a time limit to it. It may be a huge timeline that we as humans may not be able to recognize, but it always does have some place where this can leave eventually over a given long enough period of time. So if we think about, for example, the tree. A tree can be considered a system. So let's take a look at what I need to do. So first I said that a storage is represented by box. So I want to draw a box. In that box I'm going to put tree. But what about the tree is actually a storage? Well, specifically we're going to see that the biomass is the storage within the tree. So now I have to consider what's going to go into my tree. Well, going in there, obviously we have some photosynthesis going on, so we're going to have some carbon dioxide that's going to go in. This tree is going to produce leaves, it's going to produce other things that are going to go to the soil, so we'll just call that litter to soil. So these are the decomposing leaves, the barks that are falling off, that kind of stuff. The tree has to take up some nutrients in order to go through its processes as well. So that would be an input in. Likewise, it also needs water. What's going to come out of here is going to be some tissue. So some types of, we'll say, birds can use some of the tissue from the tree. Sometimes we even eat like the bark of a tree that can be used to make teas and stuff like that. So tissues are going to be going to other trophic levels. We also have, as a result of photosynthesis, we know that carbon dioxide, water goes in, and we also have oxygen that's going to come out. And we have some more water that's going to be released from here. We know that we need to have some light that goes in order to help create that process of photosynthesis. And we know that heat is actually going to come in and heat is also going to go out. So we're going to produce some heat as a result of the chemical reactions. We're also going to take some in from just the ambient lighting that's going on. So I can take my tree, the simple idea of a tree, and see that all of these processes are going in and out, and this whole tree is the storage. Next, we have to consider that systems have a wide range of scales that we can look at them from. So we can obviously go from a small idea to a large idea. So if you think about you, the primary target, and if other people are watching this, that's great too, but you're sitting in a class. And for my students, this class is in Dubai American Academy, which is located in Al Barsha, which is located in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, and then in the Middle East. We can even take that further and consider that we can look at the globe as well. We can take a look at our local ecosystem that makes up part of our biome that also makes up this idea of Gaia that we're going to talk about in just a second. Biological systems, remember, are also different complexity levels that we're going to see. So if we start off with atoms and we work our way up to DNA molecules, which then goes to a cell, different cell types make up an different organ, organs make up organisms, make up different species, biomes, and finally the biosphere. So we can see that we can break it down to the very, very small aspect of systems or take it out to the very complex. So this is where this idea of Gaia fits into play. On our largest scale, our entire planet can be viewed as an ecosystem. This hypothesis originated from James Lovelock in the 1960s after we had seen a lot of pictures from the NASA space missions that showed us a whole picture of the Earth. People had never seen the whole Earth in one shot before. So once James Lovelock particularly saw this, it inspired him to create this hypothesis. It says our planet functions as a civil living organism. So the Earth is a global control system. If you think about things like surface temperatures, atmospheric conditions, ocean salinity, all of the elements that are in there located in our rocks, our soil, our atmosphere, all these different places of our biosphere are working together to create a complex interacting system of the Earth. So all of those small parts are all working together to keep this Earth and to maintain the climatic and biogeochemical conditions that we find in homeostasis, the best balance and the best possible option for conditions on life on Earth. So now we need to consider that there are different types of systems: open systems, closed, and isolated systems. So in an open system, our energy and our matter are going to be exchanged across the boundaries of the system. So if we take a look at this picture here, it's going to show us a forest, and we see that our organisms are going to take in things from their environment: energy in the source of heat. It's going to release heat in the source of respiration. It's going to take in food through the nutrients. It's going to have as nutrients storage because of the trees and the biomass that we talked about earlier. So open systems are organic. So they have to interact with their environment to take in energy and new matter and to remove wastes. If you consider people, we're also open systems because we have to interact with our environment to take in food, water, get shelter, produce waste products, and basically continue on as human beings. When we consider closed systems, we see that energy but not matter is exchanged across the boundaries of the system. So examples of this are atoms and molecules and mechanical systems. We can look at the Earth as a closed system because our input would be solar radiation, and our output would be this heat that's going to be coming back from the Earth. In this system, matter is recycled. So spaceships and meteorites can be seen as small amounts of matter in and out of the Earth, but generally we kind of don't consider them because they are so small, and the really part of actually spaceships aren't really considered natural. Strictly speaking, our closed systems do not occur naturally on Earth. But if you look at all of our global cycles of matter, our water and our nitrogen cycle as we have here, these are similar to closed systems. They're not going to get any more output or any more input. We're not going to get any more water into the water cycle. It's all that we have that's available here. Biosphere 2, which we'll talk about out in the Arizona desert, was constructed in order to try and replicate this idea of a closed system, as used as a possible idea if we got into space colonization and things like that. So closed systems exchange energy but not matter. The last idea we have is an isolated system. And in here, neither energy nor matter is going to be exchanged across the system. These definitely do not exist naturally, but it's possible to think of the entire system. And this is what the IB says: no such systems exist, with the possible exception of the entire cosmos. When I have full IB quotes in there, I try and put them in quotes and in italics there. So what we can do is take a quick look at how we can view these visually on one page. So if I take a look at my first open system, I know that in open system I'm going to have things that are going to interact. So maybe I've got my mass exiting and I've got energy coming out, but I also have energy coming in. And in this case, I'm also then going to have mass coming in. So in our open systems, we're going to exchange energy and materials, matter. In my closed system, I'm going to have energy, and I'm also going to have energy coming in, but that's it. And then in my isolated system, I have nothing. There's nothing coming in or nothing coming out from the surrounding areas. So open system exchanges both energy and matter. Closed system exchanges energy but not matter. And isolated systems do not exchange anything with the surroundings.